Jizzle.
Here.
Neal.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
Luce.
Here.
Zittergruen.
Here.
Hadley.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Time for public comment. Anybody public comment for something not on the agenda? Online? Okay. Consent agenda. Minutes of the July 18th, 2022 regular meeting. Claims. Special permit, National Night Out, Police Department. Amendment for outdoor service for Skyline Lanes Class C liquor license. Amendment for ownership updates for Walmart Class E liquor license. Renewal of Class E liquor license with Class B wine permit and Class C beer permit with Sunday sales for Walmart. New application for Class C liquor license with outdoor service for Traveling Tapster LLC, good for 5 days. Renewal of Class C permit with Class B wine permit, including Sunday sales for Oneota Community Co-op.
Move to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and approved. Roll call.
Olson.
Here.
Neal.
Aye.
Aye.
Jizzle.
Aye.
Luce.
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Okay, discussion and possible action on bird scooters.
What are they?
Okay, I'm not, unless JS, Julianne is the bird scooter rep that's supposed to be attending via Zoom. Not seeing any follow-up emails. I sent one today with an additional questions that we received over the weekend, so they'd be prepared. Have not heard back from them on that one.
Are we saying we have
No
no
representation
representative
from
of bird
birds.
scooter?
Yeah, assuming since JS has not unmuted themselves and identified as Julianne, I'm guessing no.
Well,
And I did get confirmation twice last week that they would be in attendance. Julianne Roller.
It wouldn't be.
Should we
should we,
move it to the end? Can we do that?
I'm good
in
with
case
that.
she appears? Yeah.
Should we table it till the end?
I think so. It kind of doesn't do any good without her answering questions or anything.
Okay, we'll move on to item 6 and come back to 5 if she comes on. Consider Elvira Estates LLC agreement. Travis, a little background, please.
Yeah, I'm just sending a quick email just to try and get
Sure.
Bird online. Okay, so the this agreement, if council remembers last month, council approved an agreement between the city of Decorah and IEDA for the $300,000 award to the city for the downtown housing grant. The city serves as the intermediary. We pass those funds through to Elvira Estates, which is Nordic Chiropractic in that project there. So since the city will have requirements to IEDA to meet the grant requirements, we need to have those same requirements for Elvira Estates. And that's what this contract does, is it will hold them to those requirements. If they fail to meet those requirements, that means we are going to fail to meet our requirements of IEDA, and we won't have money to give to Elvira Estates. So that's the premise of why there's now a contract between us and them. John has reviewed it. Did you have any additional comments, John?
No.
This is provided off a template from IEDA as well.
I make a motion that we approve the agreement with Elvira Estates for the IEDA housing grant received.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Roll call or discussion? I see that. We'll come back.
Okay.
But we'll finish this. Any discussion? Roll call?
Neal,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel.
Aye. Okay, we'll go back to item 5, discussion and possible action on bird scooters.
And so this actually may have, in the email I just sent to Julianne, it included the agenda with the link on it. And I apologize, Julianne, if I didn't actually send you the agenda as part of it and just told you be here and be ready at 5:45. So that might have been
No
my fault,
worries.
not hers.
Sorry about that. Thanks for having me today to discuss the potential of remaining in Decorah for bird scooters. Really hoping to just hear the feedback we have from the community and discuss a little bit more, and hopefully come up with some solutions to continue operations for a limited time to just see how we might be able to adjust to make everybody happy.
I did include in the Dropbox today, I waited through the end of July. So July 31 data is available in Dropbox for the amount of rides, total miles, time. That information's in there. We did receive a letter that all of council members received, and this individual asked it be expressed as part of the public record. That's also in Dropbox. Did relay the questions regarding Geo Fencing and the 18 years old or older requirement that bird scooter users are supposed to abide by. And I believe that's the information that's been relayed so far.
Okay, great. And it looks like actually our fleet manager, Paul, has just joined the meeting as well. So he'll have the firsthand information based on his operations as well. But should I start with addressing those initial questions, or did council want to speak to start?
We can hear what you got to say. That's
please.
fine.
Yeah, please address them, and then we'll come back.
Sure, yeah. So I just want to reiterate that my colleague Kylie is the account manager for Decorah, and she unfortunately couldn't be here, but will be assisting in implementing any of these changes going forward. But from what my understanding is that those main concerns are underage riding and geofencing of areas, which are things we're constantly working with the city to maintain and update as needed. So, you know, in this past month or so, it looks like we've only been operating for a little over 30 days. We've seen quite a few rides, actually. I believe it's a little over 1,600 rides and over 500 users in the city. So we are seeing that demand, and you know, sometimes there is a little bit of a learning curve, and everybody's adjusting, not just us, but the city and the citizens to this new mode of transportation. So it is natural for some complaints to come in, and our hope is to address them up front and make any adjustments as needed to make sure that we can move forward and operate and provide this mode of transportation for the city. So, you know, we're open to that feedback. And from my understanding is we haven't really had any discussions quite yet on this feedback with the city. I think one of the first things when we operate in new cities is citizens think to go to the city for complaints, but we want those complaints to go directly towards us so we can address them in that timely manner. And that's where it can become somewhat of an issue for the city. So, you know, some of those things that we would like to implement more are just some of the public outreach and some of the media that we present. For example, our community mode, making sure that residents are aware of this mode so they can report any issues or parked scooters that they don't want to be parked there directly to us. And our fleet manager, Paul, here can address them right away. But things like that, you know, since we haven't quite heard, you know, this feedback, we haven't had a chance to implement any of these changes. And we're hoping to kind of do that going forward, should council agree to continue. In terms of underage riding, you know, that is something we see and are working on different ways to always be combating that. But some of the thought that I had heard of from Kylie and her team on what we've been implementing is just additional education in the app to make sure there's messaging going out regarding the need for riders to be 18 or over, as well as the ID verification for those riders to be 18 or older.
can you, sorry, and this might have been said, can you just, what is your relationship to Bird? Like, what is your role?
Yeah, so my role is I worked with the city manager and the team to get Bird into the city. So I work usually typically with the cities up until launch, and then my colleague Kylie takes it on from there.
Okay.
But she has briefed me to make sure we can have this conversation.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I missed, what were you saying about how do you ensure that people are 18 years or older that are riding
Yeah,
the birds?
so we have an in-app feature where we work with a third party that verifies IDs. So a rider will have to scan their identification. It doesn't have to be a driver's license, but typically it would be to make sure that they're 18 years or older.
Is that being done currently?
Yeah, because when I rented a scooter, I didn't have to scan an ID.
You can just press skip.
Yeah, you just press skip.
So there are ways to kind of, typically when we start off, we kind of allow it to be a little more lenient, but once we see that issue of underage riding, because typically people will scan their IDs, we push it to be mandatory. So if it's not already pushed out to be that way, that's something our operations team is working on to make sure that that ID does need to be verified.
So if there are riders who have previously now got on them, so you have their information, would they have to put their ID in all the time so that sort of it would go back to square zero? Or would, let's say that high schoolers been riding it from, they've been riding it now. If you push that out so that it's mandatory, would they be a loophole in that system?
We would make sure that everybody needs to re-enter their ID.
Could you talk a little more about the Geo Fencing and how that operates with the bird scooter specifically?
Yeah, so our Geo Fencing technology currently is limited to the jurisdictional boundaries. So scooters are only able to operate within that area. And then I know we are working with the city on various events. I believe the Nordic Festival and things like that to adjust geofencing as needed. So we're always able to kind of implement something new just within a few hours to make sure that certain areas that we want to adjust, riders either aren't able to ride in, aren't able to park in, or have to move at a slower speed in. So the technology is something that we're always working on, and it does have a little bit of a variable. So sometimes, it could be a few feet of difference in boundaries. But so if there's a specific area that needs to be tightened up, that's something we can work on with the city to make sure we're doing.
Do you have the ability to restrict those from going on the sidewalks so that I know I've talked to or read several articles about them that you can shut them down, like if they pull up onto a sidewalk and they just turn off, something like that?
So we are developing that technology, but it's not available currently on our Bird Zeros. So it's a newer technology that we're kind of working to roll out on a broader scale. So right now, no, we can't limit it to sidewalks specifically. But that said, if we're seeing it as being something that's consistent, a lot of that messaging we can push out more often on the application.
So the only thing you can do with geofencing is to restrict it like to the city of Decorah itself?
So we can restrict it to the city. Sure, or different areas within the city that we wouldn't want riders riding. For example, sometimes parks, or just certain areas, for example, the Nordic Festival, where we might be shutting off specific streets as well.
So I have received a request from Vesterheim. They would like to make sure that the block there, so that the park, I apologize, the name's escaping me.
Heritage Park.
Heritage Park,
Yep.
thank you. That they want that geo fenced off permanently, and I do think that's that's a good idea. So if we're talking an area that's essentially a one city block, that could be a permanent geo fencing island within the city limits, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
How about like the bike trail? Is that feasible to put geofencing on that to restrict it from going on the bike trail?
It is feasible to do so. We do try to have our riders able to ride on the bike trail because they can maintain a similar speed. But if that's something that the city wants to remove access to, that's something we can absolutely discuss.
One thing that might be, I don't know that we've touched on too terribly much, but noting the geofencing capability of where you can even end your ride. I don't think we've really touched base on that, but Bird has the capability of saying you cannot end your ride within a specific area as well, correct?
That is correct. So essentially, you would try to end your ride in an area where you're not permitted to, and the app wouldn't let you close out that ride. So you'd continue to be charged until you move the scooter to an appropriate area.
Can you override that too, just like you can age limitation?
No, that you cannot override.
Can you geofence a sweet spot for termination?
What do you mean by that? Like a specific area we want people to park?
Yes.
Yeah, so we do have capabilities to, we have a couple of different ways to do so. So one of them is just suggested parking zones, and that's something we typically do with cities and can even kind of work with the city to kind of carve out areas. For example, I live in Santa Monica, and they literally just paint squares on sidewalks where they want to encourage people to park. But that said, we can do specific park zones or no park zones.
So if they park outside of those zones, they're still gonna get billed?
So since it is a dockless model, we allow riders to end their ride in any location. But in specific areas where there might be more foot traffic and we need to have them end a ride in a certain area, that's when it would be implemented.
Because one of the biggest complaint I get is the fact that they're left on sidewalks. There's one that's been parked out on a median out in our business park, downtown business park out by Pizza Hut. It's been there for 48 hours now and not moved. It's just parked on the median. I've seen them parked in the middle of the bike trail coming from Luther College to downtown. I've seen them dumped on people's yards and they can't move them. It just seems to be very unprofessional how they are collected locally and cleaned up from the streets and yards.
Sure. And that's something I can make sure to communicate with our fleet manager. You know, we do hold them to certain KPIs to make sure that they're performing in the best way. And we can kind of touch base with him offline in regards to that as well. That said, you know, these things do happen on occasion, and our goal is to respond in a timely manner. And so I think if we, you know, both the city and Bird are making sure that some of these complaints go directly to Bird so we can address them more quickly instead of having to go through you and then go to us. I think some of that will help kind of get these clutter issues taken care of in a more timely manner and getting out of the way of pedestrians or the trails.
Could you send Travis information about how to create geofencing or best practices as far as creating geofenced return areas? Because I agree with Randy. I think that if we could clean up the returns to several different locations within town, I think it would negate a lot of the complaints.
Sure, absolutely.
I think I have several things to say. And I know, Brent, did you want to comment specifically on, you looked like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of comment on what Randy had to say. Everybody might have got complaints, those calls for service we got, and for the Bird scooters, we had, so 19 of them came in, and Travis and I were talking about what these actually were. So I did some research, printed them all off. The majority of them were Bird scooters that have been left somewhere for a considerable amount of time. So that was the biggest complaint, of whether or not they were on somebody's property for a couple days, and trying just to get them to go away, I think is people's complaint that they had the most with us, and also underage drivers and unsafe driving. But so back what Randy said, that's been the biggest complaint that the police department's been getting as well.
Great, and that's great feedback.
You mentioned that you guys want to try to clear up as many of these problems that are arising as possible, and we would like to do the same. I don't think we want to put the onus on our police department to have to clean up all these issues. They've got enough to do otherwise. A lot of complaints I've had are people that have been trying to contact Bird scooters about a complaint or a problem they've had with them, and they've been unable to get a hold of you folks, or been put on hold for 30, 40 minutes and unable to get a hold of anybody to register that complaint with. What do you have to rectify that problem?
Yeah, so fastest and most efficient way for a complaint to come through to us is through the application itself. And I understand not everybody rides the scooters, but it's a community mode. So someone could go up to the scooter, say it was left on their yard, they can scan that exact scooter so we know exactly which scooter it is, say it's in the wrong location, so that those tickets go directly to our fleet manager to address them in a more timely manner. You know, we do have that phone number and email available as well that are on the scooter too, but sometimes those means of communication do take a little bit longer, whereas the app is quick.
The problem, I think, is that the constituents that are most likely to be calling and writing to us are also the most likely to have the app on their phone or want to put the app on their phone or even be walking around with the app with their phone on them, right? I mean, so I think that's where I think most of the people I talk to, and I was going to say most of the complaints I get are actually complaints about getting a hold of Bird, right? Like, I don't have my phone on me. I don't have the app on me. I've been on hold on their phone for, this long. And you can imagine them with a cord on their phone, right? I mean, so these complaints, there isn't an accessible way for people to get a hold of you, then they come to us.
Sure, and that's understandable. And I'll make sure to work with Kylie and our fleet manager to have a quick response time in terms of these issues and come up with a solution to get that feedback more directly towards us.
How do you deal with multiple users on the same scooter?
Yes. So obviously we don't allow double riding, but
No, but it happens. How do you deal with it? Is my question.
Yeah, I understand. Sorry. Unfortunately, there's not a way for us to be aware of these situations directly as they're happening. So the best we can do is monitor users and as well as ban users who are consistently going against rider rules.
If a police officer were to see double riders and then were to stop the scooter riders and sort of charge them, would you be able to take them off the rider list permanently?
I can touch base with
violating the rules
on that. I believe we should be able to restrict those users. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe that should be possible. And I'll touch base on that with Kylie.
I don't use the scooters. I don't have the app yet. I do have a friend who uses them to commute around town almost daily. I suspect that there are a number of folks who use them for regular transportation, a lot of young people. And I also sense that they like to not dump them on their own property, and they'll leave them on the neighbor's property or property down the street. I don't know why. I mean, if you're gonna ride them to your apartment, you should probably just leave them in your apartment, area, and they might be there in the morning for you to use again if you want, I suppose. But I do see that I think people are not being, courteous about, putting them on their own property when they're done using them or leaving them in another convenient space for people to grab. I would also say, too, that I was not in favor of this to begin with, and so I've sort of just watched it for the last month. And the experiment isn't obviously going as well as Bird scooters would like. I also know that things are going to change in a couple of weeks. In a few weeks, we're going to have a lot of Luther students coming into town. And I think the usage of these things is going to go way, way up. And in fact, you may not have enough scooters in town to handle all the Luther demand, but I guess we'll wait and see.
More.
What's that?
Sorry.
They'll bring more.
Did I say that out loud? Okay.
Yeah, and so I'm not sure that the experiment has been given quite enough time to see what the cycle of use, is in any given year. And I guess I wouldn't mind seeing what service this would provide for Luther students who want to get downtown or want to get out to the shopping or wherever they want to go. So.
So I was gonna say I've been using them just to see how they go, and I also want to be very clear that I have gotten more feedback this week, I think, because we asked about people who really enjoy them and use them. I do see that this is people who use them like them, and people who don't use them hate them, right? I mean, that's what we as city council have to deal with, is we represent both people who use them and people who don't. What I would really love to see from Bird is incentives for riders who use them well, and disincentives for riders who don't. And I don't want to put that burden on our police department. I think that is unfair. I don't want the burden on the city. I like the idea that if you try to park that scooter, you get charged if you're on the trail until you're done on the trail. Like and if you park them in the wrong place, you get charged. And it does seem that there would be an incentive. I get why you don't want a docking station, right? Because it is convenient to be like, I just need to go home. And if I have to bring it back downtown, now I'm not home anymore, right? So I get that, but then I think, so if you don't park it at your own house, or you don't park it and show that picture, you get charged an extra $1 or 50 cents. Like, there has to be a way to build in incentives to use these correctly.
Sure, and I really appreciate this feedback, and also appreciate the open-mindedness to continue the program and make these changes to make sure those riders are having a good experience. But that's absolutely something we can work on as well. And I think a really great next step as well. Obviously, I want to continue to hear whatever else, what other feedback that you have. But I think a really great next step would be for myself and Kylie and Travis and the Parks Department, or even the Chief of Police, to sit down on a call and discuss the best ways to push forward and make those adjustments so that we have them in place when students get to town, things like that, and have them in place going forward.
I guess one of the frustrating things that I have about them is, while they're relatively new here to Decorah, we've only had them for a little over a month or so. These things have been rolled out in cities all across the country, all across the world, and Europe as well, for quite a while now. And what I read on the internet is the same problems over and over and over again in every city. And they don't seem to be getting corrected, those problems. I would think by the time they were rolled out here, we would not be having those problems. But we seem to be having the same problems everyone else has had. Any comments as to why that is? Why those don't seem to get corrected?
Sure, yeah. I mean, a lot of the problems that arise are just that of the user themselves. We can't regulate each individual user, and usually it's just a smaller group that's ruining it for everyone. The way the old saying goes, you know. So we're doing our best every day, every year, to be implementing new technology so that our future vehicles and upcoming vehicles, you know, will have the technology to address some of these concerns that are top of mind for cities. But obviously things like that take time. Scooters, even though we have launched in so many cities, it's still a relatively new industry. I believe it's only about 5 years old or so. So there's still a lot to learn. And unfortunately, there are those users that just kind of ruin the fun for everyone. But our goal is always to be working closely with the cities to manage these errors and judgment of those riders, and make sure that we're limiting it as much as possible, so that everybody can have this mode of transportation and it not be a nuisance on the city.
I'd have to say that allowing people to skip part of the registration is not a best practice.
Yeah, so
That was the comment that I wanted to make, because there's a lot of like different things, but really for me, the issue that I think is the most serious is how easy and sort of maybe standardized it's become for people underage to be on these things. And if you all do have the technology to push the app to require ID verification, and you want to continue being in Decor, then I urge you to push that out like as soon as possible.
Here.
That's extraordinarily important to me, that happen. And for me, the other thing that I heard you say that I think would improve the experience of our city's embrace of these scooters is working closely with our city staff in rolling out new geofencing, you know, fairly quickly. I know, I think it's important that Bird be responsive to our city staff when we're ready to designate certain areas for geofencing, because I think that would also greatly improve things. But, you know, the final point I want to make is just that, you know, there's, you know, we're kind of used to vehicles parked in the city right of way when they're on the road. Like, that's very normal. And I think that for some people, what they're not happy about is the feeling that the bird scooters are, you know, cluttering the sidewalk, or, you know, they're not really placed in great areas or whatever. But like, I do think that there is an aspect of that we will get used to, just the way we're used to seeing cars parked on the road. This is a form of transportation, and I think it's an appropriate use of city land for these scooters to be parked at the side of the sidewalk, out of the way of the main lane of travel. And I think that's the hard, that's very hard for some people, but new things are often very hard for lots of us. So I'm glad that it seems like we're thinking about continuing this experiment, but it's so important that we get the kids off of them, and it's so important that we get that geofencing set up.
Again, I guess I also want to just, and I think I've said it, but I want to reiterate that I think the users are happy. It's the people who live in Decorah who are not users that we need to be, I think, working on methods to help. And I know what you're saying, Steve. It's just that when you see where scooters are parked, they're parked on people's private property, or they're parked in the middle of a sidewalk. And I know you're going to tell me, well, what about the car that pulls out and is blocking the sidewalk? There are more scooters than cars blocking sidewalks at the moment. And I think that's problematic. I also want to reiterate, talking with the police department, they are obviously city staff, but in terms of really thinking about what are some of the other issues that we're not seeing, geofencing off the highways. I know we talked about highways, and having a scooter on a highway is, to me, not appropriate.
Sure.
And I like also slowing them down in certain places would be appropriate as well. And the last thing, I think it was Ross who sent out that there are places where the scooter company has invested some amount of revenue into stickers on sidewalks and painting, reinforcing, like, don't put your scooters here, or, you know, stay on the road in certain places, and sort of helping use revenue to support the city infrastructure in order to make scootering more compatible with our infrastructure. I think that would be a good avenue for Bird to go to actually contribute to creating an infrastructure to support the scooters.
Sure. I really appreciate all this feedback again. And these are all things I'm taking note of to discuss further with Kylie and Travis as well on our next call. So we'll see what we can do in terms of that as well, to make sure that the city and we're getting everything in the correct order. But I do appreciate this feedback.
Then one other thing is, I see Paul writing, right? I think I think it'd be really good, Paul, if you don't mind, just making sure that I think the public has been really engaged on this issue. It's helped me a lot. No, Paul, yeah, this Paul. Oh yeah, I'm talking to Paul Scott, and the paper, right? I think the public has been really engaged on this issue. I've gotten lots of letters for and against. It's been really helpful as a council member to hear, because we can't be the eyes and ears. So it is really helpful to hear from people like, oh, it's improving, or hey, I'm still having this problem. So I don't want calls to stop. I don't want people to be like, oh, they're not going to do anything about the scooters anyway. I think as we try this experiment, public input is really important to help us inform how to make this better. So that would.
Absolutely. And if there are any groups such as a downtown business association or anything like that, that would be helpful for us to be in touch with, I'm happy to be meeting with those people as well.
Well, I would like to see more designated parking areas that you got to leave them in when you're done riding. There's nothing wrong with somebody walking a block or two or three to get on one and then take off and then put it back there, so that they're not being dumped into our residential areas and ridden, you know, in parts of town where they probably should not be. I mean, I don't know, Emily, where you get on, if you come downtown and get on one, or are they out by your house where you get on them and come into town?
Oh, I've used them as a great experiment, actually. So
Okay.
I used them on to get home from downtown, and then I had one parked in my own driveway for 2 days, but it was in my own driveway. And Todd's like, is that our own personal scooter now? And then I used one
For
at
$1 a
Nordic
minute.
Fest to get up the Broadway Hill, and then I parked it appropriately in the city right of way off the sidewalk, and it was gone within like an hour. So
No, I think my friend who uses uses a bird scooter for transportation, I think he always secretly hopes that when work is done and he walks out of his office, that the scooter he rode to work is still there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, we do have our data as well that we share with the city, and that's something that we can collaborate on and really see where people are riding, to kind of understand what residential areas they're ending up with, and how we can best solution where to park the scooters in those cases. So I think we have a lot to work with. I know it's only been a month, but based on the data and feedback as well, I think there's a lot of room for positive change.
This is kind of a different question. What is the life expectancy of the scooter itself? How long do they last?
Gosh, that's a great question that I don't know off the top of my head. We do have a number of models of scooters, but our goal is to have these scooters last as long as possible, to make sure that we're not having a huge environmental impact on, just bringing in new scooters all the time. So that's our end goal. We want to make them last as best as possible. Yeah, but I can get you exact numbers if that's something the city is curious to see.
Somebody had emailed me today that the approximate life expectancy is 3 months to 1 year. And how are they disposed of once they have reached the end of their life, so to speak?
That is a great question. So they do vary in lifespans. I believe, the 3 months is some of our older models as well. But every time we build a new product, we build it with longevity in mind and the ability to update software instead of just bringing in new scooters all the time. So that's our goal always moving forward, is to just not have to recycle these scooters all the time, but just to be having scooters that'll last a very long time, that can keep up with the times as well.
And how are they being disposed of? How do we get rid of the batteries? They just
I'm not sure of that exactly as well, but I can get that information to you as well.
Okay.
Okay, council action.
I'd like to see that. If I feel like we don't, seems like there's consensus to keep going, right? If there is, then I want us to be cognizant about bringing it back in a month and seeing how things go. Like, I really don't want to just sort of be like, oh, people get used to it, people will deal with it. I think there's enough animosity towards this that we need to make sure we're talking about it and making sure it's getting better.
I guess I'd like to see bird scooters be more proactive on cleaning up some of these problems that they don't seem to be very active on.
Yeah, which is kind of why I feel like let's see how it goes for the next month and then bring it back, because it'll give you some accountability. Like, hey, if we don't clean it up in Decor in a month, we will take action, kind of thing.
Sure, absolutely. I appreciate your willingness to continue moving forward, and I'll make sure I touch base with our team here and the city staff as well to implement the best changes moving forward, and hopefully have a good month and future months past that if all goes well.
Yeah. So riders, if you love riding them, be good with them.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your time. All right. Excuse me. Item 7, consider housing readiness assessment toolkit application.
Okay, so included in the packet are a couple documents that reference two things. One is a program, workshop, if you will, offered through ISU Extension and Outreach to help the community identify within itself what the housing needs are. To fund that is an application through IEDA that would be $10,000 grant, would require a cash match of $5,000 from the city. The program itself with Extension and Outreach costs $5,000. Again, they host a series of work sessions with council, with community members to identify what our housing needs are. Let's see. This was one of the, I would say probably the main item that the Mayor's Ad Hoc Housing Committee has touched on. Otherwise, they've just heard from different projects, different other communities. Myself, Steve Zittergruen, and Mayor Borowski reached out to 3 communities that have gone through this process, have received positive comments back. It is relatively new. I want to say it was only about 2 years that they've been doing this. Does that sound right, Stephen? Yeah. So there haven't been a lot of communities that have been through it, but the ones that we did touch base with did have positive feedback on them.
How is this different than our own housing study that Upper Explorer did for us? And what would information we get that would be different?
We would use that information as part of this workshop, but this workshop would systematically take us through all of our laws related to housing. It would have us look at our zoning. It would look at our housing stock. It would, it's kind of a way to systematize and I guess I think that was the value of the program that the mayor I spoke to really stressed. She said it was just so good to have a plan. We knew we had a problem with housing, but it's so good to just have a structure to address your problem with housing.
And so what was, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and most housing needs or housing studies are going to say you need this amount of low density, this amount of high density, this amount of single family. They're going to identify the needs within your community, but that's where they stop. So this process is the community itself identifies, hey, you know what, we need to increase our low density multifamily housing options here. That's a goal of our community. And then as Stephen said, it's not just that's our goal, that's what we want to do. Okay, now you need to address in your zoning issues, your setbacks in your R3 zoning are such that it prohibits 4-unit apartment, 2 up, 2 down apartment building that does typically blend in with single family homes. Your zoning code doesn't allow for that. And so it helps you identify those issues within your own code and the way you as a community operate to help those developments that the community has identified as a need.
So it goes one step beyond just identifying what our housing, our housing needs are, but it actually tells you how to address them in code.
And I would.
Emily, if you look in Dropbox, there's that rural housing readiness assessment pamphlet.
Yep, I saw it. Yep.
Okay, because it's really good. It explains how it coordinates building code, zoning, taxes, stock, and council and P&Z. So, and Board of Adjustment as well. I think it's pretty holistic. And Travis, I think the problem is the way you initially started to describe it. It sounded to me again like a duplication of efforts of a housing survey of stock and needs versus readiness as far as how we can react to that data. And I think this would be a good exercise. I wasn't involved in the subcommittee, but John used to live here, who started this program, and Scott Tim is one of the facilitators. And it sounds like we reviewed this several years ago at the Rural Economic Development Summit. And it seems like a very good exercise because it brings together planning, Board of Adjustment, building code, and the city council. And so we can really look at taxes and everything as well. I'm supportive.
And as Ross pointed out, and really to try and drive this home, a traditional housing study is much more data driven, XYZ, this, you need X units of single family, Y of multifamily, but that's information you're being given. This approach is feedback from the community, whether it's council, planning and zoning, Board of Adjustment, community as a whole, others within the housing, because you do establish a housing committee, which the ad hoc housing committee would be a good start, but you establish a committee that works through this ISU extension and outreach program to identify what our goals are. So not just what does the data say we need, but what does our community want? That's one of the big differences here in this program.
And then it forces you to have a little skin in the game with this matched grant and some external funding as well. But that was another point brought up, that's a nice feature to get you started. One possible outcome after this, we go through this program, they might say, you need to update this part of your comprehensive plan, or you need to look at your zoning code and rewrite that. Well, you can use the grant to achieve that, to hire outside drafting help if you want, or I talked to a city that used it for some beautification work near a new housing development they were building. So it's just nice to have some skin in the game that kind of, you know, gives you a kick in the seat of the pants to actually implement what the workshop kind of tells you should implement.
So my other question was, because I did read it, it was talking about how the actual cost of the grant is free, but that $5,000 then would cover costs to implement? Is that
Correct. So that's
correct? Or is that addition?
So that is the net result. It's the grant through IDA is $10,000 with a $5,000 cash match from the city. The cost to participate in the extension outreach program is $5,000. So that grant covers the ISU extension and outreach program, and then it's essentially a 50-50 split for whatever else you implement, whether it's, you know, paying John or additional consultants for drafting zoning code, you know, revisions, or we do a new comp plan based on the feedback that we got. That's going to be an outsourced expense, and this will have that 50-50 split beyond the initial registration.
Okay.
Or initial program.
And Travis, does this helps us justify any changes to our TIF district or abatement program, right? This program would qualify for the state's due diligence?
Yeah, so that is one of the steps in TIF that the area you're establishing should be in line with your comprehensive plan. Did I explain that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Yep.
Council's desire?
So we're doing a suggested move to do the assessment tool, or what's the wording?
The request on the agenda is to apply for the IDA grant application portion and submit an application for the program.
Luce would so move?
For 5,000.
Yes, for 5,000, up to.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call?
Luce,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Okay, item 8, consider awarding Hacker Nelson contract for $40,500 to do our required city audit.
Okay, so, sorry about that, I was just touching base with Carrie. Included in the Dropbox today, as well as emailed to council, was a quick email out to other communities through ClerkNet, email listserv that Carrie is part of. So you did see some other comparables within the community. Initially, the city was requested to do a 3-year contract with Hacker Nelson, as has been done in the past. We were hesitant to do a 3-year and asked to have a 1-year proposal for council consideration. So that's why you're seeing a 1-year consideration. $40,500 would be an increase of 3.85% from last year's cost. If a single audit were to be required because of federal funds exceeding $750,000, which I don't believe will hit $750 for the last fiscal year, but that would be an additional $3,400. Comparably, this is a little bit higher than what some other communities are experiencing. Is a little bit higher than I would have anticipated for the city of Decorah.
And what's our option?
The option is to not award and do a competitive RFP, and we could send proposals to the state of Iowa. They provide audits for cities across the entire state. I will say not every audit accounting firm provides municipal audits. It is a somewhat specialized, but there are a number of other agencies out there as well.
Is Hacker Nelson always been doing ours for.
I've got quite a row of Hacker
Okay, so
Nelson
it's
binders
a
from
number
the
of years
audit.
They've been doing them.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it is almost double.
Yeah.
That's,
More
it's
than
really,
double in some.
Putting it bluntly, I would recommend to council that we not award and do
Yeah, I
a
think we-
competitive bid.
I think we
I would
need
like to do a competitive bid and so move.
$20,000.
Second?
20,000 could get eaten up pretty quick with hotels and meals if there's.
Randy, can you use your mic?
That 20,000 could get eaten up pretty quick with hotels, meals, travel, et cetera, if they gotta come in from Waterloo, Mason City, wherever. 'Cause there aren't.
$20,000 to come from Waterloo?
Yeah.
Well,
They're per diem, Randy.
do
I
you-
think
do
that's
you
part
know
of the
how ma-
question,
Do you
George.
know how many days they spend down here?
We can still ask, I mean, if that's part
Well,
of their
that's-
bill to us, I would assume it's gonna include it in the cost.
Well, that's fine, I'm just saying, it's,
Point taken.
I'll say, I guess, it's been moved and seconded. Is that okay, Randy? Discussion here? Okay. I'll say that I have emailed Hacker Nelson several times over the course of the past few months to ask questions about the audit and our financial system. And they are extremely good with their responses, and it's great information. They're a pleasure to work with. Obviously, we have to look at a huge cost difference like this and take that seriously. But I also like keeping money local whenever possible. So I feel pretty torn about this one. I know that they have been keeping extensive records on behalf of the city's regarding the city's assets. You know, that's a years-long repository of information, and I don't know how a new audit firm would come up with information about the value of, you know, our streetlights or the values of our bridges. So I guess I'm just curious, what is it like to switch auditing firms? Because I think there's got to be some value to continuity.
It's a double-edged sword, continuity. Honestly, I'm not alleging that there's any kind of, I don't have concerns of impropriety or such, but there does become a level of comfort sometimes. That's, I hate bringing it up, but that was one of the issues in Dixon, Illinois, is that they were continuously audited by the same firm, looking at the same exact things and having that relationship. A new firm is gonna look at different things, and they're gonna have a different approach to it, no doubt. So, there's gonna be change, it's gonna be different regardless of who would be selected. They're not gonna have the same, level of like you're talking about, Stephen. They're depreciating our assets for us, even though we don't use, we still act on the cash basis, but they're appreciating the assets for us as if we were following gap financing. A different firm's not going to do that.
I think our auditors should appreciate the fact that we are noticing a price differential and are being judicious with our funds. So in a competitive bid environment, certainly I think local has a certain aspect as you look at the review of the bids, but I think going to bid can't hurt anything. So I hope we do this.
I think it could help things, actually. Hacker Nelson can certainly put a bid in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I also am a huge supporter of local, but I also recognize that it's taxpayer money, and there's not a lot of it, and so we got to figure out how to use it really wisely. And hopefully local organizations can work with the city on that as well and see that happening. So I hope they submit a bid and realize, you know, if they see this, maybe there are things that they can be like, oh, well, maybe we can lower our bid. I don't know, but it seems extraordinarily high compared to what we're looking at here.
What did they do it for last year, just out of curiosity? So, similar,
Yeah.
okay.
well, and for history, the work that they've done when we got audited by the IRS a few years back, they found 2 very minor infractions, and most of them were internal policies that we had done wrong. But otherwise, the audits that we had on record and the work done by our office here the IRS was very pleased with our work, so.
And I do want to emphasize for everyone in the room and listening at home, I do not believe there's any kind of improprieties that are being missed, and that's why not the case at all. You're just doing your job. Well, just to reiterate, as Randy said, we're not having issues pointed out, and this is not a reflection of that. This is purely a reflection of cost.
Correct.
And I mean, it's one thing to look at a organization and say they've never had any mistakes, but then we're assuming that other ones do. But I'm assuming that most cities who have their audits done, like the ones we just got estimates for, they aren't getting crappy audits for $20,000. I assume they're also getting good audits.
Well, they all get filed with the state of Iowa.
Right. So I mean, so it's, you know, it's kind of that back to, yes, we're not saying that anyone is doing a bad job, even if we get a $20,000 audit. It doesn't mean that somehow they're not going to do a good job for us.
Mhm.
But Washington's was 14,000.
Right.
Is there a motion and a second on the table at all?
Yeah, there is.
There is.
Okay.
Further discussion?
No.
Roll call?
Luce,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen, Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel,
No.
Neal.
Aye.
Okay, consider pay application number 2 for the 2022 alley improvement project. Let me get my notes here. Totaling $105,333.66. Is that correct, Jeremy?
330.
$105,330.66.
Right.
Correct.
Yep, that sounds correct.
Okay.
All right, so as you heard, Jeremy's online if we have further questions, but pay application number 2, $105,330.66 of the $185,148.73 contract amount. This is for work up to date minus 5% retainage, and the project has essentially been completed, but need to wait for grass seed to take, and we'll rectify quantities here with in the near future. Pay application number 2 has been reviewed by city engineer and recommended for approval.
Your alley looks pretty nice there, Travis. Hadley would recommend approval.
Luce would second.
To be clear,
Okay.
this alley project was in the works before I moved there.
Yeah, we've heard that before.
I do have several neighbors that are requesting when they're next, and
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call?
can I get, who was the second?
Hadley made the motion, Steve
Okay.
Luce seconded, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Okay. Hadley,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Okay, consider a resolution terminating the Decorah Business Park Airport Urban Renewal Plan and ending the Decorah Business Park Airport Urban Renewal Area.
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of lump items 10, 11, 12 in general together as part of this when I present this item, and go into a little bit more detail on 11, 12 later. But keep this in mind that if the end goal is to not establish a new urban renewal area and subsequent plan on just Skyline Motorsports lot parcel, and if that's not the end goal, to develop a development agreement with them, then all these should be no. But if that is the end goal of council, the first step would be, we currently have an urban renewal plan and an associated urban renewal area established in 2001 up in the Humboldt Business Park Airport. And there's nothing, did I say Humboldt? I
You
did,
did.
didn't I? Thank you. Wow, it's been almost a year. The Decorah Business Park So that plan and area was established in 2001. There's currently no debts associated with this, meaning no development agreements, no infrastructure costs. The state of Iowa did change the rules to around TIF here a few years ago, so it did start a new timer regardless. And to have a cleaner slate, there's two routes we could have went. The one in front of you today is recommended by staff and council, our TIF council, is do away with the old one. There's really not much to be gained by keeping the 2001 plan and area in place, because that timer has already been started based on the changes of state legislation a few years back. So instead, what we would recommend is do away with that, terminate that one, start new. The alternative would be to, we'd still have to amend the existing 2001 urban renewal plan. The area is already there, but we'd still have to go through the same process and amend the plan to incorporate the potential project. Those are really the two options for that outcome of some kind of development agreement with tax rebates, not abatement, rebates back to Skyline Motors or Skyline Motorsports. So this would be the first step to eliminate that 2001 area and plan.
Luce would move resolution terminating the Decorah Business Park Urban Renewal Plan.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Council discussion?
I get 11 or 10 and 11. I'm a little confused about 12. So I thought the idea is that we're moving towards a individual negotiation with businesses who come up there.
Correct.
But 12 seems to be the same language as 10 and 12 that we're getting rid of, creating an urban renewal plan. Yeah.
Yep, so the individual development agreement is negotiated inside the scope of the plan.
So this will slow down development then, because we don't have anything there and the developer's gonna have to come to us to get anything before they can make their final plans, whether they wanna relocate here or not?
So actually, that would have been the case regardless. There was maybe some misconceptions on how it was set up. So right now, the abatement structure that's been utilized up there only includes 2 parcels in the business park. The rest of the lots up there are not eligible for abatement, which is really what brought this to light, is when this was marketed as eligible for tax abatement, contingent upon council approval. Well, that never made sense to me. Why is it contingent upon council approval? Well, because the council actually has to change the whole plan and everything associated with it, which is not the proper process. So the Norwegian Mutual and Marshall Electric are the only 2 lots up there in the business park that are eligible for tax abatement. This urban renewal area from 2001 that was up there, I believe was the one utilized when TG relocated as a rebate, not an abatement, and may have had some other previous infrastructure improvements associated with the plan. But that's not what the city's been using. They've been using the revitalization area that's up there currently. And again, that revitalization area right now is only 2 lots.
But we're not switching to a revitalization area. We're essentially now saying we should enter into development agreements.
Correct, and that's what
Right.
the difference between a revitalization area and renewal
Yep.
area. Revitalization area, here's the rules, meet the rules, you're eligible. Renewal area requires a development agreement that's negotiated every time.
Yep.
And which is why you can go ahead and include just 1 parcel to start. If your focus on an urban renewal area is going to be TIF rebates, you can start with 1 parcel and then add them on, because you have to negotiate the development agreement with each one anyway.
So 10 and 11 repeal the old way of doing business, and 12 sets up a new way of doing business.
Well, 10 and 11 essentially, it's not even the business the city has used. That's a revitalization area that's separate than here. But if the council wants to use development agreements to negotiate each one, this establishes a new urban renewal area and just starts us off clean.
Great.
And starts the clock ticking one more time. Resets the clock.
Resets the clock, correct, gives us more time.
Because, is this actually outside the business park
No, this is,
skyline?
no, this is within the business
Yeah,
park.
okay, because
but-
at one time they were talking about being outside and annexing in.
Correct.
All right. I just wanted to make clear on that.
Okay.
Okay. Further discussion? Okay. Roll call?
Luce,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Okay. Item 11, consider an ordinance repealing ordinance 1037, providing for the division of taxes levied on taxable property in the Decorah Business Park Airport Urban Renewal Area.
Okay, so this is the second step.
I make a motion that we repeal ordinance number 1037, providing the division of tax levied on taxable property in the Decor Business Park.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Council discussion? Seeing none, roll call?
Neal,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Okay, item 12.
I do want to note that was the first reading of the ordinance. There's no rush. It can be waited, but just want to point it, make sure everyone knows that's the first reading. So this will be back next time.
Item 12, consider a resolution setting a date for a public hearing on designation of the 2022 Business Park Urban Renewal Area and on Urban Renewal Plan and Project.
Okay, so this is the,
September 6th.
yep. So September 6th is when we would want to have the previous ordinance read to have the third and final reading done prior to this actionable item. I mean, they can be done at the same time. There's no issue really with having an overlap there, but for cleanliness, I'd prefer it. Again, assuming council wants to continue on with reading item 11, and we'll approve that eventually, this will set a public hearing to again hold the same conversations we've been having, talk about urban renewal areas, and that part of the plan is to provide tax rebate incentives to Skyline Motorsports for development up there. Between that hearing, I do want to point out, so between that hearing and now, if this is approved, P&Z will have to weigh in, as Ross pointed out before, they'll have to weigh in on this urban renewal plan in this area aligns with our comp plan. So they'll have to weigh in on this, as well as we will have to hold a consultation hearing. Typically, that's done at the staff level, where it gives the school district and the county the ability to come, ask questions about the plan, and we must provide that notice to them. So that'll happen in between now and the hearing.
Travis, is it possible to expand the area to include the property that Decorah Jobs picked up within the last 5 years and the 40 acres that's currently at the end of Sweet Park Line Road that's undeveloped, and maybe the farm by the airport?
We could, and the benefit to that would be if we wanted this increment, once it's created, to potentially go towards anything else.
Infrastructure?
In that area.
Yeah.
Infrastructure, correct.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
if we wanted to do that, but this, if we do that, the timer starts as soon as we incur the debt, that development agreement. So if we have this area in there, that increment goes away after 20 years.
Right, but let's say that chunk of land right across from adjacent from the airport needs a frontage road.
Mm-hmm.
It's not currently in the revitalization district or urban renewal plan now, right?
Yep.
I'm asking, as part of this process, can we expand to include that area, the 40 acres that's unplatted that would need infrastructure, and the area behind the airport that's currently rented?
We can.
Does P&Z have to touch that, or is that our discretion?
No, it would be council's to add it into the consideration, because we'd want to have that added to the plan. This is similar to what John would point out for any other public hearing that we hold. Now's the times for council to debate this before approving it, so that we can get the notice out to the paper, and for P&Z to take that into consideration when they're saying it aligns for the comp plan or not.
Okay. Fellow council members, I suggest we incorporate these areas.
But wait, I think, Travis, aren't you saying that if we do, then the timer starts on them and we're not ready to have that timer start there?
Correct. And so most infrastructure projects, I would propose council, I know pole line was a much shorter repayment period, but typically when you're doing a TIF repayment development area, you want a 20-year bond, and you want that full time of increment to be able to repay that debt. And that's,
I thought you said it started with the development agreement.
correct. So that timer for that whole area starts with that development agreement. So if we don't include any area that's going to need infrastructure in the future yet, until it's ready to be included.
So I think what you're saying is if we start a development agreement with anyone in that area, the whole area timer clock starts.
Correct.
So if somebody in the business park comes and we create a development agreement with them, everybody's timer starts now, including areas without infrastructure.
Correct.
That make sense?
Including areas that haven't even been sold.
Exactly.
Correct.
So we actually want to keep it small, because otherwise everybody's on that same timer.
I completely misunderstood then.
Yeah, the benefit of where this could be beneficial. Let's say we anticipate 3 years from now, we're going to put in a frontage road. To get ahead of, if we calculate that 17 years is enough, we'll have enough increment, we're happy with incorporating it now, we could certainly do that. But unless we know that infrastructure cost is going to go in soon, I would recommend holding off until we get closer to that going in.
I guess I'm just thinking back to the original, the advertising, right? In order to advertise the business park or to advertise some of these areas that are economically viable and large, how can you say that there are incentives available without having the tools in place?
Mm-hmm. Similar to the way they have been now with marketing it as subject to council approval. So basically it would be the same marketing method, but the actual means are different. So they're still marketing it as subject to council approval, they're eligible for tax rebates, but it would still take council's action to amend the area and plan and a subsequent development agreement.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
So right now, we're just setting a public hearing.
Correct.
I would recommend after the vote on that, we maybe set a economic development committee to discuss the area to put in. So at the public hearing, we can have that information ready to go. Would that make the most sense?
Yeah, and worst case scenario, we end up postponing. You can still hold the hearing, but if we were to deviate at all,
Right.
Then we would have to postpone the hearing.
Correct.
But yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So, council action?
Move to set the public hearing for September 6th.
I'll second. Further discussion? Roll call?
Luce,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
And I appreciate you spoon feeding us. I apologize for the confusion.
Oh, no worries. Like I said last time, this is an entire semester of master's work.
Okay, city manager reports.
Okay, so I do need to provide a little bit of an update, although it's not much of an update. At the next council meeting, we will most likely have an agenda item regarding the Bank of the West lease at the next council meeting. I do want to point out that family thoroughly enjoyed our first Nordic Fest since being here. We were able to get out both Thursday and Friday, and got out Saturday morning, and actually while out and about, did receive a bunch of positive feedback about the article in the paper, and so do appreciate the newspaper sitting down with me and having a conversation. Do want to point out last MEU educational session is tomorrow night, I believe, with My Energy, starting at 5 o'clock. Let's see. So at the next agenda, you will also see another urban renewal plan process starting at the next meeting regarding Bluffside Gardens. That one we should be far enough along. That should be at the next meeting. And then this is way down the road, but just as a notice, September 19th council meeting, I will be at the ICMA annual conference and out of town. If council remembers, that was one of the requirements that I become an ICMA credentialed manager. I have to attend this annual conference as part of that, so I will not be here at the September 19th council meeting.
When do you anticipate the traffic impact study being done, the quick start study?
What week are we on? It was supposed to be 6 weeks from, I provided, so we had the work session on Tuesday.
Yep.
Right? So on Wednesday, and I think I heard somebody say we didn't take action on it, but I must not have been clear enough. So based on the council's discussion at the work session, and I said at the end of the work session, I'm taking that as staff has the ability to engage those services. So did reach out, give them the notice to proceed. We should be, I want to say 3 weeks away.
Okay.
From that. They did the traffic counts here about 2 weeks ago. I know some questions came up surrounding the timing, and we discussed that in the work session, that you can estimate based on student enrollment, you can estimate school traffic patterns, you can estimate, even college traffic patterns, but you can't really estimate the tourism related. So
would it be good to maybe think about, just because I know Dex will want to be here if we discuss again, and I would recommend we have another work session. I think we've clearly talked about traffic, but there are probably other things we should, before bringing it to a council, I feel like we maybe need one more discussion. If the traffic impact study was going to be done in 3 weeks, should we plan that August work session to be a discussion again regarding Quick Start?
We can do that.
How council members feel, but
If it's done, yeah. If it isn't.
It should be done by the last week of August, yeah.
I don't
And
know.
any idea when Bolton and Mink might be coming back for the North Alley civic process?
Last I knew, they were still trying to coordinate the Downtown Betterment Association stakeholder meeting. They were still trying to lock that one down.
We're really slipping on that one.
Yep, I can't remember who I had that conversation with earlier today, that we're probably 2 months behind.
How do
And
we,
we've only done maybe a month's worth of start.
is that on their
Yeah.
our end? What's making that be held up?
I would say a combination of the community's end, and I don't want it to sound like fault, but you got a new school superintendent that came online July 1, so understandably the school wanted to wait until Dr. Cronin was here, and so that pushed their stakeholder meeting into July. And then when they were supposed to hold that stakeholder meeting with the school, which they already did, they were supposed to have Downtown Betterment on the same day, and I believe there was a conflict on the Betterment side on scheduling, so they had to cancel, and they were working to reschedule the last update I had. And that's it for all mine.
Okay. Carrie, anything from your office?
Yeah, last time Ross had asked for an update on the group cast. This would be the messaging system that we will be using. I had laid in front of you an example of, this will be part of the marketing. Right now, John Pankow and I are working on the admin side. The goal is to have it up and running by the first day of school. But I also want to reiterate, the department heads, and if you guys have any feedback, please feel free to contact me. This isn't something that will be used on a regular basis. We don't want to overload people on information just to use it. Park and Rec might be a little bit different on how they use it or if they choose to use it. We're looking more for the snowstorms, the water breaks, the street closures, to give them that kind of information. So I just want to make sure too, and maybe that's also a topic that we kind of touch base on at a work session also, just so everybody's kind of on the same page, because I don't want anybody thinking or misunderstanding the intention of each piece.
Are there, when they sign up for it, is there a method that they can opt in and out? Like, let's say they
Yes.
say, we want to be able to get blank, blank, and blank, so that maybe there is someone who actually wants to know, like, when city council is meeting, or, which most people won't want to know,
Right.
but some people might.
As
So
they are tonight.
can you get that as an opt-in? So I get the overload, but I also get the choice.
Opt-in, but also with that opting in, I don't know if there's maybe possibly going to be a way to link that with the website, and that would be an IROC web question, but
I would
time also it
actually,
takes to create that information.
that exact example that you gave, I would actually steer them a different direction. We do have a form that is required to be filled out annually for notification of official city meetings and everything. I would have them actually fill that out
Okay,
so that they don't get lost on that shuffle every time we send out
sure.
agendas and everything.
So we actually have a form that people can fill out that says, I want to get an email for every city agenda.
Yep.
Sweet. I
Mhm.
did not know that. That's
Yep.
fantastic.
It's been years, I think.
Most of the time, it's just been the media that uses it, but
Yeah.
Alliant uses it, so a lot of people are starting, there's
say-
others that are trying to come in or using it, not trying.
Want to
That
say
are.
mid-20s for numbers.
If you like having a copy machine send you 4 emails a day, it's a great service.
Yep.
Just stop in at the office and we'll give you the form.
That was kicked off sometime in the last 6 months.
They're good for, just for information, they're good for 12 months.
Is it as we revise the website, would that form be something that we could put online versus a physical form as well?
Yes. We are working closely with Corey from IROC Web. He is giving us a lot of information on how to successfully maintain a website. Kind of with ours, it's just gone wild. And it's no one's fault. It's just, when information comes up. So he is really encouraging an ongoing relationship that if we have an idea or we want to put something to have them in the loop. And so I think it's going to be, and Leslie and I have already talked, it's going to be the first thing she works on in the morning. It'll be the last thing she looks at before she goes home to see if something needs to be on there. So it will be more focused, and so we will have a continued relationship with IROC Web. They've been a huge help.
Awesome. Yes, to bring up what Steve said, is there a way when that agenda goes out that it could say City of Decorah as opposed to copier?
That's one of the changes we have identified. It'll
Okay.
be a more manual process, because right now, I will admit, it's pretty easy. I'm not saying that's the reason we need to keep doing it, but you walk over to the printer, you sit it in there, and you push agenda recipients start, and you
Yeah.
walk away, and now everyone's been emailed, notified that's required.
It would be nice if it
But
said
we
like
need to get away
P&Z
from it.
agenda or council agenda
Yep.
or even City of Decorah, but
Yep,
yeah.
we've talked about. and
Okay.
That is identified on our
But the more
List.
the lists that we create, it's
Yeah.
the more lists we also have to maintain, and it's really easy that one list gets missed, and then someone gets missed and gets upset.
I will say, we will continue to maintain, not continue to maintain, it'll be one list.
Yeah,
It's not just titles changing as opposed to city copier scan
right.
is
right.
what you're getting your email from.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Department heads?
I do want to say that we are glad that the police department made it through another Nordic Fest without any major issues, so that's been nice. And it was pretty amazing. We got a lot of public support, people coming up to a lot this during Nordic Fest, which was kind of nice. Also want a reminder that tomorrow night we're having our National Night Out at Phelps Park from 5 to 7. We have the Buck Hollow Band. Winnebago County Cattlemen are up there doing their thing. So it's a free meal for anybody that wants to come up, and all they offer is just kind of a free will donation if you'd like. So other than that, that's all we have going on.
Thanks, Brent. Anybody else? Jeremy? Okay, council, start with Ross online.
I just wanted to say thank you to the street department and the city arborist and anyone else within the city who put in, and PD, who put in the extra hours for the work following the storm. A huge amount of loss in the trees, which was sad. But I certainly appreciate how quickly things got cleared up, streets opened back up. I did get some feedback from people who had power outages, and there was some trouble communicating with Alliant regarding the status of the outage or whatnot, especially in the Oak and Pershing Avenue area. They were down for over 12 hours. Their smart meters were showing that power had been restored, and they didn't have power. And so there was some failure to communicate there on that end. So I hope that hopefully that can get resolved.
Okay, thanks, Ross. Kirk?
Nothing, Mayor Pro Tem.
Stephen?
Reiterating Ross's appreciation for everyone. I went to the Fireman's Breakfast during Nordic Fest, and it was well attended, and everyone looked very tired, but I think happy to be there. So thanks to the fire department for that event, and thanks for all the work that goes into making Nordic Fest just one of the greatest times of the year in this city. I'm sure many of you were following this very closely, but I participated in and won in the Nordic Triathlon. So I am this year's ultimate Norse, and I did promise you all last year that I would train hard because I came in second last year. So hoping to keep the crown next year. We'll keep you updated in 2023.
He refuses to braid his hair, though. I don't know why.
Keep the lutefisk down, more power to you. Okay. Steve?
I have a SMID meeting Wednesday morning at 7:30. Need to talk to Johnson, Hadley, Neal about Economic Development Committee meeting. And you too, Travis. I want to say I was so impressed by all of the volunteerism that happens in our community, especially at Nordic Fest, and the way we get things done that way is just a benefit, shows the nature of Decorah, I think. So thank you all volunteers.
Kirsten?
Yeah, I want to reiterate that as well. I had to leave town on Sunday morning, and the town looked horrific with all the trees that were knocked down. I didn't return until Wednesday, and I was amazed at what a great job people had done to clean everything up. It looked tremendous by the time I got back on Wednesday. Couple things from the visitor center. My wife and I worked there a few weeks ago. A lady had come in she had moved from Houston, Texas to McGregor, and her and her husband had been unloading boxes for several weeks at a time, and he said, let's just get out of here and go for a drive. They drove up to Decorah. They went out to Dunning Springs, and she said she wept when she saw how beautiful Dunning Springs was. And I think a lot of us take for granted around here what a beautiful place we live in, and that just kind of reiterated that fact of what a beautiful place we have here. My wife and I are going down to the state fair. We don't have a specific booth for Winnebago County or Decorah, but we have a Northeast Iowa one. We'll be working that booth on Saturday the 13th, and hope to have an update for you on what kind of results we get and feedback on the next council meeting. And I did talk to a guy from the Raptor Resource Project today. I happened to be walking along the dike, and he was out trying to take pictures of eagles. And he informed me that the first eagle nest that we had out by Holt Houses there, by the Fitch Hatchery, has 2 young eagles back in that. So hopefully they'll get that camera up and running for everybody to be able to see those eagles coming up here. That's about it.
Thank you. Emily?
Well, that just reminds me, someone should notify the fish hatchery not to run heavy equipment this time then. Scare those eagles away. I want to just reiterate my colleagues' appreciation for the city staff. Every department, I think, all hands on deck for getting our streets cleaned up after the storm. Always when a storm like that happens, you're thankful for all the damage that doesn't happen, and that we were able to not have major flooding and all the things that could have gone wrong. So thank you, everyone. I know departments lend hands across departments, and everyone put in extra time, so that is fantastic. I have thoroughly enjoyed all of the department head meetings. It's so great to get out and see everyone. I encourage my colleagues to do that, although then we would take up even more time. So I'll just share our staff are awesome. And I really appreciate just the conversations we've been able to have. I've got a couple more meetings, and it's really been great to learn more about city business and needs, so thank you. I also, I've been on council, I think this is my 2.5 year, and in that time, there are some big decisions that the city is making right now, and I love all the feedback I'm getting from constituents, and I'm getting a lot, especially about Quick-Star scooters and the apartment building. Every letter I get, I try to respond to, and it's one of the joys of being a council person, but it also has been weighing heavily on me, a lot having to do with Quick-Star decisions. So I've been trying to do things like go see the 3rd generation Quick-Star in La Crosse. So I went to that this week, and I encourage my other council members to actually go see the Quick-Star. I think it makes a difference when you look at something in reality, see its location, talk to the staff there, see how it fits in, to get a better understanding of what I think will be a monumental decision that we make in the next 2 months. In the same way that I encourage you to get online and look at what other cities are doing about bird scooters. So just doing that extra research for me has been really informative as I weigh these decisions that I feel like are very 50-50 in our own community about what I'm hearing. Other than that, that's all I have. Thank you again to everyone.
Thank you. I don't have a whole lot tonight that hasn't been already said. Our street department and city crews did a fantastic job. I enjoyed seeing how the neighborhoods pulled together. The Sunday morning after the storm, nobody asked, but I saw neighbors out in other neighbors' yards cutting up trees, bringing in trailers when nobody had them, and getting them out to the yard waste site without being asked. I mean, that's one of the beauties of our community. Not expecting anything in return, they just grabbed the bull by the horns and took it on. With that being said, can I make the motion to adjourn? I will.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, everybody. Thank you, Randy.